Hi, I'm in Fort Wayne, Indiana, a beautiful breezy day. In front of me is a hill, which is the location of the David Archer Cemetery. Not a lot left because it is a very old cemetery. And I'm here to visit, I guess put in quotation marks, the grave of a very famous person that all of us know. And I'll explain the quotation marks here in a bit. But this person's life is totally surrounded in legend, historical fact, maybe a little bit of controversy, just all mixed together. And that person is Johnny Appleseed. Yes, Johnny Appleseed was a real person. His name is John Chapman, and he was born in Pennsylvania in 1774, died here in Fort Wayne in 1845. And all of you have seen pictures of John and heard about him just kind of roaming through the forest in plain clothes, had that old cooking pot on his head, was friendly and trusted everybody, the settlers, the Native Americans, all the animals, and did what he could to help everybody. Well, a lot of what you've heard about John Chapman is not true. John did roam the forest in plain clothes. He did trust everybody. He was very helpful to the Native Americans and the whites and the animals. In fact, he was a missionary for the Swedenborg religion, which is a Christian denomination. But John was a very, very astute businessman. So he left Pennsylvania and traveled throughout Ohio and Indiana planting apple trees. And what John was doing actually was staying ahead of the settlers. As they moved west, he'd move ahead of them and he'd buy land. Between Pennsylvania, Ohio, and Indiana, he actually owned 1,200 acres of land. So when the settlers arrived, John would happily sell them a plot of land. And if they wanted an apple orchard, he'd be happy to sell them a plot of land with an apple orchard on it. If you didn't have an apple orchard and you needed apple trees, he'd sell you seedlings. They were 3 cents a piece or 6.5 cents a piece if he planted them for you. Apples were quite important to the people in the frontier because they were a source of healthy food. Also, they made an income from making applejack. So, very important resource, and John realized that and made a pretty good living off of it. Now, the reason I put his gravesite in quotation marks is this is not actually where he's buried. There was not a lot of good records at that time where people were buried. And of course, people that were around at that time have died off. The stories they've told have got mixed up and intertwined, and there's been a lot of urban growth. So some experts feel he was buried a couple miles from here, and there's other towns that claim he's actually buried there. So this is more of a monument to him, and we're going to take a look at that. First, let's go around the bushes here, and there are 2 markers left here from the Archer Cemetery. Like I say, there were other families buried here. So this first stone, I can make out the word Charles, but that's about it. I hate to kind of see what else is on there, but it also says Lucy, so that must have been his wife. And I can't see the ages very well. But over here then is the grave of John Parker. Parker family is another family that's buried here. And John, I can't remember, it was either in his 70s or 80s when he died. So he's buried here with several of his wives, and I believe another family member, or maybe a child. I could be wrong on that. If anybody knows, please put it in the comments. So let's take a walk over here to John's memorial. Okay. And here we go. Nice fence around it. And our first plaque here says John Chapman, Johnny Appleseed, died in 1845, erected by the Indiana Horticultural Society. And there's a little badge under there. It's too rusted to tell what it is. And a nice little walking area here. Got some stones and a little bit of gravel. And this stone's got an apple on top. It says Johnny Appleseed, John Chapman. He lived for others. And at the bottom is an open book that says Holy Bible. So a very nice little tribute there. And a couple more stones out here that involve John. See if I can get this gate open. Okay, and this one says, in fond memory of John Chapman, endearingly known as Johnny Appleseed. These gravesite improvements were provided by the Men's Garden Clubs of America and Johnny Appleseed National Memorial Foundation Incorporated, September 25th, 1965. And then we have one over here in the grass. And it's Johnny Appleseed Festival Incorporated. Gravesite landscaping provided by Johnny Appleseed and Festival Incorporated and Leaper's Lawn Service Incorporated. So I'm assuming they have a Johnny Appleseed Festival here. I know I used to live near Lisbon, Ohio, and they had an annual Johnny Appleseed Festival also. I don't know if they still have it or not, but Johnny Appleseed did come through that area planting apple trees. I don't believe any of his apple trees are still alive, but there are several places that have apple trees and orchards that came from some of his apple trees. And of course they do have some apple trees planted here, which is kind of appropriate. There is a museum here in town, and it has a very expensive glass vase that Johnny Appleseed gave to a young girl. So that's just a little more evidence of his wealth. They also have business records that were signed by him. In fact, they have some of them have the signature of Johnny Appleseed. And that's just a little further evidence that he was here from 1830 until his death in 1845. And this is all contained within the Johnny Appleseed Park. I drove around the park, very nice park. They've got some athletic facilities over there. They do have a campground, nice campground. I believe it's $30 a night for full hookups. So if you do come visit, you've got a place to camp there and a beautiful park to explore. So I hope you enjoyed this look at Johnny Appleseed. I apologize if it popped your bubble of a sweet, kind gentleman. He was still a sweet, kind gentleman, just very astute in his business dealings. So thank you for watching this, and we'll see you in another video.